Arab Aramin is Palestinian. In 2007, his sister Abir was shot and killed in front of her school by an Israeli border police officer. Arab is a member and activist in the Parents Circle Family Forum. His father, Bassam Aramin, has served as the Palestinian co-director of this organization. And our second speaker this afternoon, Yigal Elhanan, is a Jewish Israeli. When he was 4 years old, his sister, Smadar, was killed in a Palestinian suicide bombing in Jerusalem. Yigal is a member and activist as well in the Parent Circle Families Forum. And also his father, Rami Elhanan, previously served as the Israeli co-director of this organization. The work of this organization is so important, certainly at this time, and has been for many, many years. And for those of us on this call, this can be a real time of hardening our hearts and of closing our minds and our emotions to a shared and sacred experience that we all know very well, and that is the human experience, what it means to live on this planet together. And so today, we bring compassion and we hold space here in this digital room for what we are about to hear and witness, which is to say the two of yours stories and testimonies of love and loss. And just before we turn it over to our first speaker, Yigal, I'll say on behalf of everyone in the space, we are present, we are holding space with and for you, we are listening, and welcome.
I think I was just writing the host to unmute me, but it happened before I could finish it. So sorry for the silence, and maybe silence, it's not such a bad thing to have in our very loud, very difficult times that we are in right now. I think this meeting in this kind of times that we have is nothing short of a blessing, in the sense that both Israeli and Palestinian society now and the international community, as we can see, is becoming so polarized and so it's either you're against, you're for, or you're for one side or against the other. And conversations like ours that deal a lot in the in-between, that deal a lot in the gray, that deal a lot in the complexity of life inside this conflict, vis-a-vis the occupation and the injustice, as Jews and Palestinians, Israelis and Palestinians, is something that should be voiced louder and louder in these sort of times. I'm Yigal Elhanan. I'm 31 years old. I was born in West Jerusalem, 1992. And I'm a member of the Parent Circle. I'll start shortly by introducing an organization, and then I'll share my story, what brought me to be part of this organization, and then Arab will share his. The Parent Circle Families Forum, unfortunately, has approximately about 700 families which are members. I'm saying unfortunately because we are the only organization, the only, I can say, political activist organization that doesn't want any new members. The reason that we don't want any new members is because that in order to become a member in our organization, you need to lose a loved one to the conflict, to the occupation. And this is a destiny that we do not wish upon anyone. From this sentiment, from this experience that we have as bereaved families, we go all over Israel, Palestine, and the world to whoever would listen to us. And we are calling for all of this to stop, for the cycle of violence to stop, for the occupations to stop, for the conflict to stop, and for a just solution that would be agreed upon by both Israelis and Palestinians. Our activities are very diverse, mostly activities such as this one, lectures and talks, but we also bring Palestinian and Jewish Israelis together for a narrative project. We bring Jewish Israeli and Palestinians, youth, bereaved families, youth, together in summer camps. We hold lectures in schools, in community centers, in youth centers, and many. My story, my path towards being a member in the parent circle began 2 days before my 5th birthday. On the 4th of September, 1997, I was born on the 6th. I was very excited towards my 5th birthday. It's an important age as a 5-year-old, as far as I can remember. But on that Thursday, 2 days before, 4 high school students from the Gymnasia Ivrit High School in the city center of Jerusalem left the school in the middle of the day. Probably skipped school, but they told their parents and their teachers they're going to do something, going to buy textbooks. Probably they plan to go and do something a little bit more fun than that. Unfortunately, they did not get the chance because they met in the Ben Yehuda promenade in the city center of Jerusalem, 2 Palestinian suicide bombers, 2 vengeful, hopeless, as the statistics teach us, Palestinians that left that morning their refugee camp near the city of Nablus, wearing to their bodies detonation belts and grenades. In the suicide bombing, 7 people were killed, the 2 Palestinian bombers, and 5 Israeli civilians. Yael Botwin, Zichron Livracha, was killed instantly. One of the girls, Sivan Zarka, Zichron Livracha, was also killed instantly. Daniela Birman, 3rd member of that group, is still rehabilitating as we speak, almost 27 years later, from a very severe brain injury. An additional young man was killed instantly, and my sister, Yigal Elhanan, was killed when she was 14 years old from a shrapnel of the bomb that hit her on the back of the head. They say that she was also killed instantly. Now, I do not know of a word in Hebrew, Arabic, or English that can describe that feeling that I hope no one here has met, of what happens to a family when a loved one is violently being ripped away all of a sudden. But I will try, because this is why we are here. And I would like you to imagine a body, your own, that is all of a sudden missing an essential organ or limb, something internal, something external, something that you will always feel its absence and that will never go back. And this was happened to my family. We were a very normal Israeli Jerusalemite family. We were always kind of liberal left, not extremely political at that point, not extremely active at that point. We were part of the society in Israel, which on the one hand does everything they can do in order to contribute to the state and to the society with all their hearts. That means also going to the most difficult units in the army, going to the demonstrations when they are there, but not something beyond that. And like any other Jerusalemite Jewish family from West Jerusalem, also from that specific sociological background, we did not know, meet, or think about Palestinians. Because life in Jerusalem or Jews and Palestinians are completely segregated, which is not a word I'm using lightly. Until the age I was 5, Palestinians for me were a word. I didn't really know what they described, what that word described. Of course, it did not describe a people with a face, with a story. It did not describe a neighbor because, again, we do not live next to one another. We do not share the same institutions. We do not go to schools together. But after the 4th of September 97, Palestinians became something very tangible. Palestinians became the people that killed my sister, that took away my older sister that was very close to me, and I was close to her. Now, 2 years after the bombing, my parents started engaging in radical activity towards peace, towards justice, and towards the end of the occupation. In 1999, my father joined the Parent Circle, and my mother became an activist through different organizations by her own right, mostly through academic research. But for me, the story was a little bit different. I didn't really understand. It's not that I didn't understand the moral political stance against that. I understood the logic that my father is saying that we do not want this to happen to anyone else. And then for that sense, I'm grateful growing up in a family that did not teach me vengeance, but taught me how to channel those feelings of rage towards something else. But for me, I didn't really understand why this story of Smadar, who was my sister, would be relevant, interesting, and why should it be shared with complete strangers, like what I'm doing today? What is it to you, for example, those who are listening to me today, that Smadar was a good dancer? What is it to you that she was a good sister to me or to my brother? What is it to you that she was a good friend? Or what is it to you if she was a bad friend and a messy teenager? It has nothing to do with my intimate traumatic experience that shaped my life and made me who I am today, for better or worse. But one side effect of my parents' political activity in the Parent Circle was to dissolve that segregation that I grew up in. All of a sudden, Palestinians were, well, now after the bombing, they were no longer these faceless people, this word that may have described construction workers in Jerusalem, or people working in gas stations, or people that I could see on the street and ask my mother, what is this language that they're speaking? They have become the killers of my sister, but also a few years into the activity of my father, they have become people. They have become Wurud Abu Awad, who was my age and lost her uncle during the second Intifada. Or they have become Hamd al-Baw during the first Intifada, sorry. Or they have become Hamd al-Baw, who lost his brother Firas during the second Intifada. Or they have become Arab Aramin, who you will hear shortly. Now, if there is no blessing in Smadar's death, there is only grief and pain. But if I need to find one blessing, is that it brought to our family, that it brought to my life this understanding that there is something very, very wrong in the place that we live in. That there's something very, very wrong to grow up in a city that has almost 1 million people, but you would not know almost 400,000 of them unless something like this would happen to you. And I started joining as a kid to the youth activities of the Parent Circle. And all of a sudden I find myself sharing and being understood by those people who were, part of the collective that I associated with Smadar's death, and that can understand me on my most personal level because they have been through the same thing. Now, I grew up during the second Intifada in Jerusalem, going out of my home to school until during my elementary school years was something dangerous. I did not go on buses. I did not go to public spaces, also because of my own family history and because we just did not do that, because you could have been part of it. You could find yourself in a bombing, in a suicide bombing. Now, these two sides of the equation, you can say that on one hand, you know Palestinians who go to their homes, they come to yours, you understand the reality of their lives. On the other hand, the reality of their lives under the Israeli occupation. On the other hand, you grow up being a Jewish Israeli in a city that, for you being a Jewish and Israeli, is a good enough reason, I'm saying sarcastically, that you could die, like what happened to Smadar. Now, this is the complexity. Growing up in the parent circle, growing up as a member of a family of peace activists, but in the same time, living your own reality. Now, the second time that I met with Smadar's death in a political context was when I reached her age. Smadar was killed when she was 14 years old, sorry. And naturally, at an age, you ask yourself a lot of questions. Most of them are not as smart as the rest, but some are quite okay. And one of the better questions that I asked myself was, I wanted to understand why. I wanted to understand why, not in this kind of, non-concrete way. I wanted to understand what happened before the bombing, what happened, why did it happen in Jerusalem, what led to what happened to us, to my family. And then I understood, I think, one of the more important realizations that are following me to this day. The suicide bombing in which Smadar was killed in was one out of three of the suicide bombings during the first term of Benjamin Netanyahu in office as prime minister. In one of his most flamboyant speeches from 2003, he says there were only 3 suicide attacks during his time. This gained him the nickname Mr. Security. We saw where this brought us today. And one of those attacks is ours. Now, okay, I came to learn that, and then I came to learn a number that shook me back then, and I will hope shakes your world now, although compared to what's going on today, it seems like a very small number. Between 96 and 99, during the first time of Benjamin Netanyahu in office as prime minister, 220 people lost their lives only inside the context of the Israeli-Palestinian conflict, not connecting also to the conflict Israel had in southern Lebanon at the time. 120 Palestinians and 100 Israelis. That means that there were 220 families who were part of the same dysfunctional family that Arab and I are members of, family of the bereaved. That means, and at the time, that was a very profound understanding for me, that Smadar's death is not some kind of God-given fact. Smadar did not die of an illness. Smadar did not die, not even in a car crash, although that is also a political death. Smadar died as a result of political choices that were made by men and women, like ourselves. Smadar died due to a political choice made by Benjamin Netanyahu in 1996, which was to open the Kotel tunnels, the tunnels that go underneath the Western Wall, underneath Haram Sharif, one of the most sensitive places in the world, and probably the most sensitive place in the Holy Land. And as all security forces told the cabinet at the time, this ignited a very large wave of violence. Now, the fact that my life changed, my family's life changed, that Smadar was ripped from us due to that political choice, made me realize that if choices were made that could take her life, choices could be made to allow others in this bloody region to keep their own lives. And it became much clearer to me, the activity that my father did in the parent circle, and became much clearer to me that I need to engage in that activity as well. Since 2014, I became an active member in the parent circle. I've been giving with Arab lectures all around the world and in Israel-Palestine for whoever would listen. And I think that is that for now. Thank you. تفضل يا أخوي.
Thank you, Yigal Elhanan. My ex-enemy and my new friend, and now he's my brother. I will start with I will describe a little bit my hero, the man I still alive because of him, and I can speak to you. My hero is my father. His name is Bassam Aramin. He was in the Israeli jail for 7 years, from age 16 to 23. And his crime was to throw stones on the soldiers who was broken into the village where my father was living and growing up. And also my father was putting the Palestinian flag on the trees, in the streets, and in the school, which was a big crime in that time. And I think also he was doing some bad shit in that time as a kid for those stranger people who comes to the village. And when my father get out of the jail, suddenly he met my mother, and then he has 6 kids, 3 boys and 3 girls, and I am the oldest one. And since I start to understand things in life, I understand that my father is my hero, he's my star in the sky. And I start to ask a lot of questions, and especially I was driving him crazy by my question on about the jail and how the jailers and the soldiers was treating my hero. But he never answered my questions, and I didn't know why, what the reason of that. I will stop now with my hero, and I will start with my story. And I was born in East Jerusalem in 14th of January 94, and my sister, she was killed in 16th of January 2007, which means 2 days after my 13th birthday, and it was the last time I saw my sister appear on live. And that day I was 13 years old. Abir, she was 10 years old. As I said, I am the oldest one, and Abir, she's the third one in the house. But for me, Abir, she wasn't the third sister. She was my second mother. In that time, I was very noisy, very crazy boy, slapping the kids everywhere and going back home to tell her that I'm very strong and no one can beat me. And she was telling me always how to act good, how to be a good boy. But unfortunately, my second mother, she's not there anymore. And we are the human being in our nature. If someone slaps us, we want to give it back. And that's what I wanted to do for my sister in the past. And in that time, I was calling my father as a cheater for the family and as a cheater for my sister's blood, because he keep talking to those Israelis who killed my sister. And in that time, especially in the age of 13, there is no human being in the other side in my mind, in my eyes, because I never saw until that time an Israelis as a human being, because all the Israelis that I have made, only the soldiers who standing on the checkpoints, searching me, searching my family, searching my people. All the soldiers who was broken the door or comes to my house at 5 o'clock in the morning, broken the door, taking my father from the bed because he has a Palestinian ID and my mother, she has an Israeli ID, and they can't be in the same bed without permission for my father from the Israeli government. So there is no human being the other side. And as I said, I called my father as a cheetah. And I told my father, I think you are a bad father, and I think it's my job, and I will take revenge for my sister blood. And after that, I stopped going to the school anymore because my sister school was in front of my school, and we was going together from the house to the school and waiting for her to get out of the school to go back together to the house. So it was so difficult for me to go back again to the school, and I didn't. But also I was lying to my family in that time that every day I'm going to my school, which I create a new school for myself, and it's the checkpoint, which is not that far from where I live. And I was doing my revenge by throwing stones on the soldiers who standing on that checkpoint. And in that time, I wanted to kill all the Israelis around the world because they killed my sister. And after a while, my father knew from one of his friends saw me on that checkpoint throwing stone and called my father and told him, you have to save your son and to stop him, or otherwise you're gonna lose him, maybe in a grave and maybe in jail. So I went back home in that day as usual, and my hero was waiting for me behind the door. And the first question was, how is your school? And I said, it's great, and the teachers loves me so much. And he said in that day, you start to lie, so we have to talk. And we start to talk. And my father told me in that day that if I killed all the Israelis around the world, I'm not gonna bring a beer back. And we're not weak people to kill people, but we're very strong people to be against our anger and hate. And actually, in that day, I killed my father with my heavy words, but also he could understand my anger. And in that day, I promised my father and God that I will never throw stones again, but I will never stop revenging for my sister's blood. And my father, he agreed with that. And I went back to my room to think, how can I do my revenge now after I promised God and my father, but without violence? So I went back to my hero and I said, how can I do it now without violence? And my father in that day, he told me that I can make my revenge without violence because there is too many kinds for revenge. But first of all, I have to make peace with myself. And if I could, I can get out of the door. And if not, I have to stay in the room, much better for me and him. And actually, it was so hard with me and hard for me because also now I don't want to remind myself and I don't want to tell you how much it's hard to get out in the middle of the night and to go through that room. And I want to talk to a beer. And after 2 seconds, I remember that she's not there anymore. So after 2 years of that or 3 years of that, I went with my father to Buchenwald, one of the death camps in Germany. And I will never forget that trip to the end of my life because I thought I'm gonna learn something big to do it here with my enemies from that big Hitler who killed 6 million Jewish people. Kind of revenge. And after 2 seconds that I was in that death camp, I start to cry like crazy for those victims who lost their life for nothing. And I confused myself more and more. And I told myself, 2 years ago, I wanted to kill all the Israelis around the world. And today I crying for their victims. What's going on here? And I went back home with a lot of questions, but there is no answer because I don't know my enemy. And once I heard that if you wanna kill yourself, keep hating your enemy. But if you want to win your enemy, learn more about your enemy. So I didn't want to die, and I wanted to win my enemy. So I started to learn Hebrew by myself. I start to teach myself Hebrew. And after 3 months, I start to speak Hebrew. And then I start to meet people, to know more about them. And I was shocked. As I said before, there is no human being the other side. And in my mind, as a child, I thought they like machines, killer machines. They don't die, but they kill. So I hear the stories like Eagle and like too many friends and the brothers in this organization. And then I figure out a lot of things that I'm losing sight of me with the time, with a lot of stories and with a lot of meeting with people, which is I start to lose hate for the other side. And I start to lose fear from the other side. And Martin Luther King says, we hating each other because we don't know each other. And we don't know each other because we don't talk to each other. And I told myself that I want to give myself the option and the right to know the others. And then I can choose if I want to go in violence way or there is a different way. And actually, it took with me 7 years to make peace with myself. It took with me 7 years to understand that my color of blood and Eagle's color of blood, it's the same color of blood. And my pain and his pain, it's the same pain. So I wanted to say, I am a Muslim and I am so proud of myself and I pray 5 times a day and I believe in God so much. And I lost a lot of friends about what I'm gonna tell you right now, but at least I still alive and I can talk. And actually, I love to talk too much. So I believe that this land, it's not for the Palestinian at all. And also, it's not for the Israelis at all. This land, it's just gift from God for both sides. And we have to learn how to share this land together. Or in the end, we're gonna have two big graves for those crazy nations. Because as a Palestinian guy or young, I was born here. This is my country. This is my land. This is my Palestine. I have no other where to go. And Eagle, he was born here, and this is his Israel, and he has no other place to go. So if we didn't find another way, we're gonna keep killing each other, or we're gonna turn to zombies until the last one of each of our people. And we don't need. Actually, we don't need. And with this crazy war that's happened, and with those a lot of blood of kids and youngs and old people and women, we can say and we can tell that there is no winner in the war, and we can only breathe the peace and the freedom when we have peace. And I will end with Martin Luther King says, tomorrow we will not remember the words of our enemies, but we will remember the silence of our friends. And please, friends, don't keep silent. If you will be pro-Palestine only, you will not help us. And if you will be pro-Israel only, you will not help us too. You have to be pro-justice and peace and humanity. Because to be honest with you, with this difficult time, it's so important and we're surviving to keep the humanity that we still have until these days. And thank you so much for listening and for inviting us.
Thank you so much to both of you. Just collecting myself, your stories are simultaneously heartbreaking and beautiful. So we're grateful to both of you for being here and for telling a story which I'm sure you dream about nightly, but also put yourself into a vulnerable place again and again in front of different audiences around the world. We have been collecting questions in the chat, and Sarah, who I think is back online, is coming back online, is our moderator this afternoon. So questions have already been coming in. Please keep putting them in, and Sarah ably will summarize and put common questions together. Okay, great.
Okay, so thank you so much. I missed the very end there, but thank you for sharing these incredible stories with us. I know there have been a number of questions that came in, which I'll be able to see in a minute. And people, please feel free to add your questions as we're going through here. One of the questions that I do recall seeing in was where somebody wanted to know what the responses were like to people, or continue to be like, particularly now, in your community, from your friends, your neighbors, your colleagues. How are people's responses to the work that you're doing? I guess particularly in the moment that we're in now. And I don't know which one of you would like to respond to that person. Arab, go ahead.
Because always I'm throwing on Yigal, so this time I'm gonna take
Okay, great.
the responsibility to answer. Okay, actually, it's with this time, and especially with the war, and with every day we losing people. It's not easy to talk about peace. And as I said, we have no other option. And I think the world now start to see that in our country that we have just two options. And the first one, it's very easy, which is to die and to kill. And the second one, which is to talk and to know the other side. And if I'm telling you that all the Palestinians standing with me, I will be lying. But I can tell you that there is a lot of people in my side that they want peace. And I can say a story now for one of my friends, but I will also tell you about my cousin, which is he has a Palestinian ID, and without Israeli's permission, he can't go to Israel. And we was working, both of us in Israel, and we was traveling all the time in Israel. And Yigal, he knows my cousin. His name is Amin. And we was talking about how before the war and how after the war. And he goes like, I think we should not talking about two states and to trying to work hard for one state, Israelis and Palestinian together, which is shutful to hear from like someone, also especially in this time. And this time, thank you, Baba. I got a kiss from my kid.
You're
And
so
actually,
lucky.
he making me feel shy right now. Actually, I forgot, guys, to tell you that 7 years ago, I bought myself in the golden jail, which I got married, and I love my jailer. And let me answer your question very quick with that kiss from my kid. There is people who against what we're doing, you know, and the reason it's the hate and the anger from the other side. And there is a lot of people who hopes peace in every minute to happen and to be real on the ground. And for myself, as a Palestinian guy who going all the time through the checkpoints and living this pressure with that war, my kid he's the biggest reason for me to keep doing what I'm doing and not shutting my mouth and keep calling for peace and letting the other side to know that behind every Palestinian there is a human being. But sometimes with the pressure, you turn to something else or to someone else and to do something that you don't want to do. And I hope I answered your question.
Thank you very much. Yigal, do you want to speak to that?
I'll add very shortly, first of all, that I'm jealous that Arab was able to get that kiss, and I'm here far away. But, send him one back for me. I'll say two short things about what's going on in Israeli society regarding, I think the parent circle has become some kind of a symbol to that process inside Israeli Jewish society. To that process I'm going to talk about, but it is not exclusive to the parent circle. All organizations that are working inside the context of the conflict, towards the end of the conflict, in the struggle against the Israeli occupation, and in a more, let's say, you can say the liberal, which is a very broad and amorphic definition of one side of Israeli political map, are being targeted more and more in the past decade or two as traitors, as people who are wishing the destruction of Israel, and it is a paid, very well coordinated campaign by hegemonic right-wing powers that are now in government, and has been for about 30, 40 years that has passed, with a short breaks. The parent circle specifically has been under attack of the current government, being labeled as an organization that has that is commemorating families of terrorists, that is commemorating in our annual ceremony. We have an annual ceremony on Israeli Memorial Day, which we commemorate victims from both sides of the conflict, and this has become a very controversial event, although it is bereaved families that are commemorating their loved ones together, which is, there's no more beautiful thing in my eyes. And I think this is a symbol of something that is very unfortunate that is happening to Israeli society after decades of enforcing the policy of occupation and segregation, is that, and as a result, and as a direct result, this has become much worse after October 7th. Vengeance has consumed everything. Vengeance has taken the place of grief, and we are now being completely run down by this overwhelming feeling of vengeance that comes from, you know, from the worst massacre on Jews since the Holocaust, that's for sure. But what is currently going on, and there is opposition, and there is a very hard working campaign on the ground of activists, and especially the families of the hostages that are leading it toward a ceasefire in Israel. But you can say that in a general sense, the Israeli public is so overwhelmed by what happened on October 7th that the sentiment of not realizing what we do has become much stronger. And an organization like ours, that for Israelis and Palestinians, being a bereaved person is being one of the highest positions, social positions in society. Both of our societies really respect the sacrifice that we have made, and this is what made us able to enter schools and community centers and many sensitive areas of society. We can see that as time goes by, and as the war becomes harder and harder, and as the casualties are rising, we're reaching more than 36,000 casualties in Gaza now, this is becoming more and more difficult. The ability to listen, even to us, is deteriorating. And this is a very dangerous moment in my eyes.
Thank you for that. So given what you said about the difficulty and the increasing difficulty, and in the face, as somebody has asked, of enormous trauma and the devastation and hatred that we are seeing today, what gives you hope right now? And what do you say to young people, in particular that beautiful young person who just came in with some love a few minutes ago?
Arab gave me the courtesy of the last question, so I'll give him the courtesy of this one. I take it from two women that I've met 2 weeks ago, Najla and Ilana. Najla lost about half her family, a very big family, in Gaza, including her younger brother in Israeli airstrike. And Ilana lost her son, who was a soldier, on October 7th. I had the privilege to share with them a webinar to the Israeli public. We had over 100 registrants, which in this time, it is a good number, a surprising number for me. And the fact, I said we do not want any new members in the parent circle. But after October 7th, we got dozens of them. I mean, there are people, and there are people, Israelis and Palestinians, that see reality as it is, that came to the understanding that Arab resonated earlier, that if we do not engage in this activity of talking to one another, getting to know one another, and working together towards the end of the occupation, towards a just and agreed upon peace, we would end up sharing the land as graves, not as homeland. And both Najla and Ilana gave me hope that I didn't think I would be able to take, because this is indeed a very hard time. So the fact that there are impressive women like them, mothers and sisters and activists that are willing to continue this calling and to bring it forward still after what they've been through, it's a humbling feeling and it gives a lot of hope.
Thank you, Yigal. Arab, do you want to respond to that question? What gives you hope right now?
Actually, the hope that since 2014, it's like a weapon for me. And I carry my weapon always with me. And to be honest with you, sometimes as a human being, we lose hope. But we're telling ourselves that there is no life with hopeless, and there is no hopeless with life. So we always have to think about the goodness in the darkness, and to try to see the light in the darkness. And as a member in this organization, and as a brother who lost a sister, if I will lose hope in this time, especially in this difficult time, that's mean all what I was believing in, it's nothing. It's the exam for us in the difficult time to create hope from nothing and just to throw to the people. And actually, we're taking the hope and we're having that responsibility from our sisters, or the message that we carry on our backs and shoulders, because there is a lot of Palestinians who don't know nothing about the Israelis, and a lot of Israelis who don't know nothing about the Palestinian. And as myself, as I was a Palestinian or young, I wasn't know nothing about the other side. And that's what we're trying to do now, that there is behind every Palestinian a human being, and behind every Israeli there is a human being. And we have to talk to the human being as a human being. And actually, If there is no hope, there is no life, there is nothing. And our hope, it's the wood in the water.
Thank you, Arab. So you've both sort of spoken to the difficulty of this work right now, and what I'm hearing is also the loneliness of it in the moment that we're in, where when there is this strong desire for vengeance. And somebody's asking about, well, thanks you first of all for your courage and sharing your stories. Can you tell us to what extent Parents Circle works with other pro-peace organizations like Givat Haviva, Standing Together, Combatants for Peace, or Women Wage Peace? Do you collaborate at all with any of these organizations? Maybe does that give you hope too?
I will let you to answer this question.
Yigal, sounds like you're up.
Yeah, unfortunately, the Israeli-Palestinian joint peace camp is not as big as the amount of organizations that you have just mentioned might imply. That means that we are working together, all of us, all the time. Members from all organizations are completely intertwined. And I think, this was a sarcastic comment, but I would say something seriously. And I've been working in Israeli civil society, specifically in these contexts for the past decade, Parents Circle and some of the organizations that were mentioned. I think that the Israeli civil society, the Israeli-Palestinian civil society, has been able to develop quite an impressive infrastructure for cooperation and quite a good coordinated effort to work together and to create a strong partnership that allows us to achieve our goals, and the goals are achieved every day. And people are working from dawn till night to achieve those goals. And that is something that I don't know who asked the question and what is their affiliation to this scene, but you can be rest assured that work is being done and it's being done well, and people are cooperating with one another.
Thank you. Rob, did you want to add anything, or you good? No? Okay, thank you then. So another question. Oh, go ahead. No? Okay. We have another question. And by the way, folks, if people have other questions, please feel free to put them in the chat. What can we do, meaning diaspora progressive, as part of a progressive liberal Jewish community in the diaspora, what can we do right now to support your work?
Okay, I think I will reply myself again. Don't keep laughing. Be serious, please, my brother. Actually, you can help us with a lot of things, but I will let few for my brother, and I will say a few. As I said before, if you be pro-Palestine or pro-Israel, you will never help us. It's not the way. If you would be pro-peace and justice and the humanity for both sides, that's one of the ways that you could and can help us. And to be in the occupation, it's also another way to help us. And I will leave the rest for my big brother.
Small brother, from the other way.
There you go.
Just to have a very clear, simple answer to that question. But I think this period that we're in has changed some, and I don't have a simple answer anymore. I think the easiest thing that I can say, which is not easy at all, is to continue what Arab's last point was, is that engage and first in the struggle to end the occupation, because what we see today is a result of an ongoing reality of injustice. And I'm saying that not to justify anything, but as an observation, as someone that has been in this field and has been working in it for some time now. And, we've been saying for the parent circle is existing close to 30 years now. And we've been saying all the time that this is a pressure pot. We are sitting on a boiling pressure pot that at one end will blow. And it could blow as we've seen and as we see today, disproportionately, horribly, violently. And this is something no one wants. This is something no one wants. And in order to prevent that from happening further, there is a need for help. The people who need that help are those who are being bombed as we speak, are those who are being murdered and massacred and raped on October 7. That means engaging and creating alliances with the forces on the ground in Israel and Palestine that wish to see this reality change. And maybe to rethink alliances with the forces who don't.
Okay, thank you. So we have another question here, which is about the future, possible future. So there are hopes for a two-state solution. We're hearing more about that lately. And we hear you saying peace in the same state. Is there another option, or what are your thoughts about these two options?
Okay, I think I have my private or my personal option, which is
Great.
actually we don't care 1 state, 2 states, 13, 5 states, or 25 flags. It's not that important right now. Which is more important, to have security and to have freedom and to have, to feel as a human being on earth. It's much, much important than the country or the land or the state. And I will answer you with this thing. We're killing each other for Jerusalem, and we're losing our life for Jerusalem, and our souls flying to the sky for Jerusalem, and Jerusalem doesn't know us. So our life, it's more important than Jerusalem. If we're alive, we can save Jerusalem, but we're dying, we can do nothing. And thank you.
Thank you. Yigal, you want to respond to that?
I want to say that my brother is very brave for saying the things that he's saying. I agree completely. We don't care. We, us too, we don't care. Make it 700 states, whatever. As long as there is a just agreed upon solution, I will sign whatever I need to sign. But unfortunately, we are not the ones that are being tasked with this assignment. I would say that, and this is something, I'm saying this as an Israeli citizen, as someone who grew up in that place, that his future is tied to that place, is that I do not know what would happen. I do not know what would be better. I know, but as long as one side is enjoying its full national rights and the other is not, nothing will end. I know, and this is, I'm quoting my very smart father, as long, which I think he's quoting a Palestinian member of the parent circle, but I'm not sure. So let's stay with my father on that quote. As long as Israel or Israelis would not have security, Palestinians would not have a state. as long as Palestinians would not have a state and independence and respect and justice, Israel would not have security. Now, this is the loop that we're in. And this is the loop maybe we need, apropos the question that you asked before, the help to get out from. Yeah.
So what I'm hearing you say is that what the state actually looks like, or multiple states, is much less important than human rights, than justice. What did you say? Yeah, that the idea of both peoples having freedom and human rights is more important than the solution itself.
Sorry, finish.
No, go ahead. Go ahead. Oh, well, just I heard
No,
a similar thing. We heard was just standing together recently, and they sort of said a similar sentiment that was not in favor of one solution or another, only that this solution recognize the rights of both peoples.
Yes, and I think this is maybe the thing that I wanted to add, or to make clear, that there is an importance. Now, again, we are not the 15 million people living between the Jordan River and the sea. And each people has a very profound and something that will never go away, the desire to be recognized as a nation, the desire to be recognized as a people, as a sovereign state, as a collective. Now, one side has that, the other does not. And maybe it will be a phase on the way towards this utopic fantasy that both of us hold. Maybe it will not. But if you ask both of us, yes, for sure, this is the same. If it will happen, Allahu Akbar.
So when you speak about, the earlier question was about one of the first questions, I think, was about the reactions that you get from your neighbors, from your people in your lives to the work that you're doing who are not necessarily part of this work. Is there anything about the work that you're doing now, about the movement for peace, for lack of a better word, is there any elements of this work that you find are particularly that people respond to particularly well, that you see people kind of pause or shift their perspective, see things in a different way? I'm looking for the kind of the hope that, what is shifting people's perspectives, if anything, in the work that you're doing.
I think I should tell you the story about Zakaria.
Listen.
I have my brother-in-law now, and he was my best friend before he married with my sister. And he had the accident with the soldiers, and they hit him on his left eye. Then after that, he can't see that well with his left eye. And then he hates the Israelis, he hates their language, and he hates me so much about what I'm doing. And he's like, you just cheater. And I still a friend of Combatants for Peace. And we had a seminar for Friday, Saturday, and I wanted to take Zakaria with me to this meeting, to see those crazy Israelis and Palestinians who's sitting together and they don't want to kill each other. And actually, I lied to him and I said, we're going to the north, to the sea. And I took him to the West Bank, to Beit Jala, and there is no sea over there. But in that room in Beit Jala was big sea of blood between two nations, Palestinian and Israelis, who were searching for hope and peace. And when he knew that he got there, he got mad, but in the end, he's there. He took the chair and he sat in the corner, and he was listening to Palestinian and Israelis for 2 days, and he didn't say nothing. And actually, especially like I'm talking about myself, I didn't get nothing new from that meeting because I was focusing all the time with Zakaria. I wanted him, like, to meet new people, to hear new stories. And the second day in the end, he started to speak with two Israeli girls. And I thought the reason of the beauty for the girls, but it wasn't the reason. They said something, and he wanted to know more about what they said. And after 2 weeks or 3 weeks of that, Zakaria, he became one of the people is very active in combatants for peace, and especially in the demonstration in the streets. And when we talked to each other, he said, "Thank you for taking me to that meeting and opening my eyes. You're right. There is different people. There is different stories." So in that time, I told myself, yes, I did it. I could open one eye, and one eye could open a lot of eyes, but things takes time, and especially with our situation. So this is my answer.
Wow, that's a powerful story. And it sounds like he went back with you more than once.
Yeah, actually, after that, he doesn't call me. He just go alone by
He
himself
just
to the
goes,
meeting.
wow, incredible.
This
So it sounds like this is what you were both referring to earlier. It's the power of those connections, of understanding the other
Yeah,
as a human being.
and Sarah, with my small experience, I learned something, that every story has two faces. And because we keep listening or hearing about each other and we never meet each other, so right away we decide to know the bad face of the story or the bad face of each other. And we don't care and we don't worry about the other face, which is the good face of us, the human face of us.
Thank you. I have another question, but Yigal, do you have anything you wanted to add to that?
A very small thing, because this is a truly an exemplar. I know Zakaria as well, and he's now one of the bigger activists that combated for peace. This is very impressive. But I think that through what Arab says, we do not come as experts. We do not come as scholars. We do not come as we come as people who lived our lives, and circumstances has happened to us. In the sense that we have our own personal stories to bring to the table, and we have our own personal experiences that taught us a few things that we're able, that because of them we are able to do what we do. And I think this is the most powerful thing that works with people, that works with listeners, with audiences, with students that listen to us, and with their friends.
Before I have another question, but are there any other new questions that are coming in from I'm not seeing the questions yet, but I see some of the questions previously. Anything else? I have a question that is connected to what you're talking about earlier in terms of the things that we can do in the diaspora. And I'm curious to know about, as I'm sure you're aware, about the violence that's happening right now in some parts of the US, and the protests that are happening on campuses across North America. And I'm wondering what your perspective is on the impact that has on the peace work that you're doing, if any. Is that?
يقال אתה יכול לתרגם לי את השאלה?
כן. יש את ההפגנות עכשיו באמריקה של הסטודנטים.
אוקיי, אז
זה עוזר לנו או לא עוזר לנו? שאני אגיד?
no, actually, as a Palestinian, I want to say something.
You should.
Actually, as a Palestinian young, I want to, איך אומרים, מוריד את הכובע?
Bow my head, or remove my hat, but bow my head maybe.
Especially for the students and about what they did. As a Palestinian, I really respect what they did, and I was so sad and mad about the American government you know, especially yeah, especially like America and what America can do and to stop especially the violence on, you know, the children who has losing life every day, and especially about the university and the students. Yeah, I think they did something huge in the world for our world. Yeah.
Thank you. Yigal, did you want to add anything to that?
Yes, but I would like to say, first of all, I'm not. I think that what this movement does, like what Arab said, for the Palestinian cause right now is huge. I have my arguments. I have my disagreements with some of what is being portrayed there, and mostly I see very strong political powers being exploiting young people's struggle towards justice. That is referring to whatever, also Israel, that is playing inside this cauldron, and Russia and China and everybody. But that's again, I don't want to really to get into that. But I would like to say that alliances are important, and the thing that I completely understand and agree with what Arab says from his perspective, but I would like to emphasize that for me, it is worrying to see that people in the Jewish, specifically in the Jewish diaspora, and I'm talking specifically about the Jewish organizations that are part of those demonstrations, are giving up on the possibility of a dialogue with potential Jewish allies in Israel. And this is something that, you know, I'm putting as a, this is something that I'm struggling with my head. This is something that I'm thinking about. That's it.
So you say, I just make sure I understand that. So that you're saying the Jewish organizations in the diaspora are giving up on having a dialogue with organizations within Israel? Is that what you're saying?
It is worrying. I'm saying that it is worrying me. And this maybe it's, and again, I need to be more well-versed in what's going on there specifically. I haven't been there in the demonstration. I have friends and people that I know that are taking part. I'm worried that organizations, Jewish organizations, progressive Jewish organizations, are on a path that would lead them to break the ties with progressive potential allies in Israel. I'm not saying it happens. I'm not saying it happened already. I'm saying that I'm worried of this as a possible outcome. That's the
So you just say progressive. You're talking about the progressive, presumably the peace work that's happening within Israel. Yeah, is that what you mean?
Yes,
yeah,
exactly.
Okay, I've got a couple more questions here. So this is a long one. I'm going to try to paraphrase it. Somebody's thanking Arab's acknowledgement of Israelis' humanity and acknowledgement of Israelis' right to be on the land, of having nowhere else to go. And they say that the mainstream Palestinian narrative of Israel or Zionism contradicts this, or that certainly Hamas does not support this. And that what we hear being chanted at Palestinian protests seems counter to this idea that Jews or Israel has a right to exist, or that Jews have a right to be there. They want Israel to be gone. So what has to happen to foster a viable peace movement within mainstream Palestinian society? That's a big question and with pretty difficult answers. They're difficult to come up with answers. Any thoughts about that?
فهمت؟
لا ما فهمتش صدقني.
ايش لازم يصير بفلسطين שהפלסטינים ייקחו את מה שאתה אומר, על זה שיש לנו, יהודים יכולים להישאר בארץ ישראל, מה צריך לקרות כדי שתהיה תנועת שלום פלסטינית?
Okay, Jalaluddin Rumi says, yesterday I was smart that I tried to change all the world, but today I became aware that I start to change myself first. And what we have to do, we have to change all the people that are sitting on the chairs right now, and to put good people who can take responsibility and can be a good partner and strong partner. And I don't know if you know or not that the Palestinian Authority with no power, you know, there is no power in the Palestinian Authority, and the Palestinian president, if he moves from one room to the other room, he needs a permission from the Israeli government. So we have to do a lot of changes.
בסדר?
Go ahead.
I would like to tap into that and say something that I think this question, I don't know who asked it, and maybe I'm making assumptions, correct me if I'm wrong, whoever.
I think sometimes you are a Palestinian more than myself, so if you can answer it.
I'm a Jewish Israeli, but I will answer, and I will. This question has a very problematic assumption built into it. First of all, that there is no Palestinian peace movement. Second of all, that it is likely for a people that lives under occupation under military occupation for the past 5 decades, to have this kind of peaceful, pacifist vision of the occupier. Now, I'm saying that without for a second justifying the means and the actions committed by the terrorist organization Hamas on October 7th. I am no Hamas lover. Hamas murdered my sister. It would be better for Hamas not to exist, in my eyes. Now, that being said, for the past 50 years, if not more, the most regressive fundamentalists, and not only them, but let's talk about them for a second, regressive fundamentalist, violent, cynical forces in Palestine and Israel have been allowed time and again to hijack mainstream discourse and to work together in their shared interest. This current government and the cynical, murderous organization controlling Gaza are partners. They have been since the beginning of this policy in 2005, and they are to this day. And this is a horrible thing that cost the lives of thousands and thousands and thousands of Israelis and Palestinians between the Jordan River and the sea. Now, I'm saying all of that because what we need to remember is that if we want to see a peace movement between the Jordan River and the sea, both of Israelis and of Palestinians, which both in Israeli society and in Palestinian society, you have dedicated activists, peaceful activists, and violent activists that are working towards peace and the end of the occupation. What we need to see is an end of the occupation, an end of military rule, an end of the policy, the thought of policy, which was written by on this topic. Historians have written about it, and people have been testifying about it. The occupation has been deliberately and systematically undermining any possibility of peaceful leadership, and the peaceful leadership that is existing is being completely crippled by the State of Israel, which is the Palestinian Authority, and the result of that policy is what we saw on October 7th. The complete and utter destruction of liberal forces in Palestinian society and making them completely subordinate to the Israeli state. Of course, Hamas will grow under that conditions. That's that.
Thank you.
I hope
And thank you.
it was coherent enough.
I think so. And I have somebody thanking you for your comments about Palestinians and the feelings about their occupiers. That was really beautifully put. And the notion that not only does the peace movement exist amongst Palestinians, but that it against very, very difficult circumstances in order for an occupied people to do that work for peace. Is that what you're saying? Yeah, thank you. Okay. Yeah, that's beautifully said. I have somebody asking about words, about language. That we get very caught up in debating over terms and what they mean. So what does Zionist mean? And what is Intifada? What is a martyr? What is the meaning of the river to the sea? Instead of thinking about the meaning behind the words. And this can be really frustrating. So how do we avoid these debates and focus on the commonalities, which I think is at the core of the work that you do? Do you have any thoughts about that question? Yeah, Arab.
Speak freely, Yigal.
And I think maybe this and maybe one question after that. It's getting getting late here. I think what Arab said earlier, but us having, first of all, I agree that in this current situation, the whole huge debate, which seems like how would I put it, the English-speaking world, or the English-speaking part of the world, is being very much engaged in, of what means what, and that does not help the tens of thousands of people that are being killed every second. But what we do in our joint work, and this is something that is important for us to emphasize, I think, we are not only friends. Our friendship, our family connection, we are truly brothers, comes after the fact that we engage in work, actual work, in order to stop this reality. And this is something that maybe is the solution, or maybe is the answer for that question, in the sense that we have our disagreements, we have our terminologies, each of and every one of us is coming from a different background, but we realize one very simple thing. The fact that I can go wherever I want between the Jordan River and the sea, the fact that Arab cannot, is wrong. The fact that there is a military occupation over Palestinians that is being enforced by Israel is wrong. The fact that a man can decide to kill innocent people one bright morning is wrong. We have these three fundamental agreements, I think. Violence is wrong, occupation is wrong, living under two different sets of rules is wrong. From here we can start. How we call that specific area and how we call that specific area, okay, let's argue later. But before that, let's meet, let's work, let's talk. I think that is the main thing.
Okay, well, thank you. I think that's a good note to end us on, and I realize I've let us go a little bit over time, so I apologize for that. I'm going to turn it back to Rabbi Glickman, and to wrap us up. So thank you both for answering those questions so thoughtfully.
Thank you, Sarah.
Thank you. Well, I guess if I could, I tasked myself with, after being present and really focusing and learning from both of you for this past hour and a half, what is like a one-line summary? Arab, I want to quote you, and you were quoting somebody else a number of minutes ago. You said, "We hate each other because we don't know each other. We don't know each other because we don't talk to each other." And I don't know about all the people in this Zoom room, but that landed pretty impressively and importantly with me. And I think what the two of you and the work of Parent Circle is doing is lifting up, as you have both said so beautifully, the human being first and foremost, regardless of religion, or address, East Jerusalem, West Bank, Gaza, at the end of the day, we must start by seeing the enduring humanity in ourselves and in each other. And so that's my summary piece, and that's my takeaway. As to the question that was asked about, so what now, what's next, which is a really important question when we have engaged in such an important conversation. Well, in addition to what the two of you offered, I would recommend that everyone on this call certainly visit Parent Circle, social media channels, the website. Tell people that you are now a friend of the Parent Circle and that you learned something. This recording will be available in the future, in the not so distant future, on the Danforth Jewish Circle website and in other places. So share that link so that we can continue the conversation. I want to offer some thank yous. Want to thank Juliet and Sarah for being respectively Zoom host and moderator. Thank you to the Parent Circle, specifically Lior Ben-Zvi, who's the Development and Communication Associate there, who has a relationship with the Danforth Jewish Circle. So that was a really nice kasher, really nice connection that we made. A grateful thanks to our donors. This program this afternoon was made possible through the generous donations of a group of DJC members. And so we thank them. And most importantly, Arab and Yigal, we thank the two of you for taking the time and telling us your stories and answering. You didn't know what the questions would be ahead of time. Surely some of these questions repeat from conversation to conversation, but each one maybe is a little bit different in our community, bringing our questions. And so we thank you for your candidness and your honesty. And thank you to everyone who's joined today. Don't be a stranger to the DJC. Don't be a stranger to the Parent Circle. Thank you so much.
Thank you so
Thank
much.
you, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you.